a new beginning. As distant hearts begin believing, redemption's bid is unrelenting. Your love goes on. Your love goes on. Carry us when the world gives way. You cover us with your endless grace. Your love is relentless. Your love is relentless. Your love is relentless. Your love is relentless. Time is up for chasing shadows. You gave the world a light to follow. A hope that shines beyond tomorrow. Your love goes on. Your love goes on. You carry us when the world gives way. You cover us with your endless grace. Your love is relentless. Your love is relentless. Your love is relentless. Your love is relentless. Tearing through the veil of darkness, breaking every chain, you set us free. Fighting for the furthest part, you gave your life for all to see. Tearing through the veil of darkness, breaking every chain, you set us free. Fighting for the furthest part, you gave your life. Love is relentless. Your love is relentless. Your love is relentless. Your love is relentless. Your love is relentless. Carry us, cover us, cover us. Carry us, cover us. Your love is relentless.
Good morning, Table Tribe. My name is Ashley. Thank you for tuning in today. We're kicking off week 2 of our series, Jumping Ship with Jonah, and we hope this message moves you forward in your faith. Here at the table, our mission is to guide people in a forward-moving relationship with Jesus, and you can partner with us by sharing this video with your friends, a family member, a coworker, or anyone you think needs to hear this message today.
Hey Table Tribe, thanks for joining us for another week online at the table. First, I have to apologize because I realized that I forgot to introduce myself to you last week. My name is Jeannie and I'm one of the pastors here at the table. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm excited to get going on the second week of Jumping Ship with Jonah. By now, we've all learned that life is not full of butterflies and rainbows. In fact, many times we do things that we know we're not supposed to do. We make plans that we don't intend to keep. We've all seen that desperate plea on social media and have kept scrolling. We ignore that text or direct message or friend request. We even get that request to join a meal train and pretend we haven't seen it. We all have probably jumped ship at some point because we don't think that for whatever reason, the outcome is going to benefit us. Have you ever stopped to consider that maybe that just makes all of us modern day Jonahs? Let's look at the bigger picture. Maybe to be a part of God's bigger picture in the world, we have to do what we don't want to do and get back on board. Last week, we met Jonah, a prophet from Israel. God called Jonah to go and prophesy to the city of Nineveh, whose people were arch enemies of Israel. But instead of doing what God told him to do, Jonah pulled a 180 and went in the exact opposite direction. He went down and got on a ship that would take him in the exact opposite way that he was supposed to go. And once Jonah got on that ship, it began to take him in a downward spiral that would get him into some deep waters. See what I just did there? Sorry. I promise that I won't be able to do this throughout the whole series. Anyway, it got him into some trouble that he was not going to be able to get out of himself. In fact, a horrible storm came on that ship, and it endangered the lives of everyone on board. And at that point, Jonah finally owned up to his own poor choices and claimed responsibility for what had happened. You see, last week we learned that it is when we take ownership of our bad choices that God can use us in his bigger picture. So I challenged you last week to search your heart and find out if God was calling you to something, and if you were following him or if you were pulling a 180. This week, Jonah is going to pull a 360.
Here at the table, we like to talk during the talk. Here's a question you can discuss with your family. What is your guilty pleasure?
So, before we dive into Jonah's story today, okay, I promise I'm done with the bad dad jokes now. I want to start with us considering this. What do you do when you've made a stupid mistake? We are in a time that's really stressful right now, and a lot of us, when we're stressed, we tend to make bad choices and stupid mistakes. We tend to do things that we know we shouldn't do. For instance, we were actually just talking about this in staff meeting not that long ago. We are all trying to be healthy and make healthy choices so that we can be the best that we can be for our families, for our church, and everything. And we know that eating after 7 o'clock at night is not a healthy thing to do. But when we're stressed, we're walking through the kitchen to do something else, and we end up stopping because the food is there, and we grab that unhealthy snack. For one person in our staff, it's sugary cereal. For me, my go-to is usually chocolate. For my husband, it's potato chips. Now, I know what I should do. I should just put that chocolate back in my secret stash, which I probably shouldn't have either. But I should just put it back and keep on walking, keep on doing what I was going to do. But instead, I convince myself that I need it. I deserve it. I had a hard day. My kids were obnoxious, and I need that to get me through the next hour until bedtime. Or how about this? I know that to start off my day in a healthy way, I need to have some time of quiet reflection and spend time with God. But instead, what do I do most mornings? I roll over while I'm still in bed and I grab my phone and I start scrolling through and checking my emails, which is probably fine on its own, but then inevitably I stop checking my emails and I move on to scrolling through social media. So instead of starting my day in a way that is going to prepare me mentally and spiritually and emotionally for the day ahead, I start off my day by scrolling through a lot of people's unnecessary thoughts and feelings. And before long, I've seen something that upsets me, and I start my day off grumpy and out of control. I get stuck in an unhealthy rhythm that I can't get myself out of.
Here's another question you can discuss with your family. Have you ever gotten stuck in an unhealthy rhythm?
When we left Jonah last week, he had been tossed into the ocean and swallowed by what the Bible describes as a great fish. Now, I don't know about you, but if I had been swallowed by a giant fish, I might feel a little stressed out. I don't know. I think maybe you would too. See, I don't know what kind of rhythm Jonah was in before this whole thing started, but I suspect it wasn't a healthy one. Because if it had been, I think he would have not gone in the wrong direction to begin with. But instead, he was caught in this unhealthy rhythm that took him downward and downward and downward until he ended up in the belly of a giant fish. And I don't know how long Jonah had to sit in that fish before he made a choice that would lead him to a more healthy rhythm, but he finally did. And the writer tells us this. From inside the fish, Jonah prayed to the Lord his God. He said, "In my distress, I called to the Lord, and he answered me. From deep in the realm of the dead, I called for help, and you listened to my cry. You hurled me into the depths, into the very heart of the seas, and the currents swirled about me. All your waves and breakers swept over me." Did you notice how many times Jonah said "you" in that last sentence? I don't know. It seems like after all of the things that Jonah went through the week before, when he finally owned his choices, now it seems like he's blaming God again. I really wrestled with this because I really thought that Jonah had learned his lesson. But the more I wrestled with it and the more I read, I discovered that Jonah really had learned his lesson. If you read on, you learn that Jonah really isn't blaming God. He's actually taking responsibility and acknowledging that the circumstances that he's in right now are justified. Jonah knew that God was not responsible for the circumstances after Jonah made a bad choice. So, Jonah actually was pulling a 360. He was turning around and starting to go in the other direction. So here's what Jonah then said. I said, "I have been banished from your sight, yet I will look again toward your holy temple. The engulfing waters threatened me. The deep surrounded me. Seaweed was wrapped around my head. To the roots of the mountains I sank down. The earth beneath barred me forever." Do you see how many words that Jonah used that described the downward spiral that he had gotten caught in? He continued to go downward and downward and downward. He realized that the results of his decisions pulled him down deeper and deeper into a deep, dark, murky ocean. And then Jonah says this. But you, Lord my God, brought my life up from the pit. When my life was ebbing away, I remembered you, Lord, and my prayer rose to you, to your holy temple. Those who cling to worthless idols turn away from God's love for them. Jonah finally acknowledged that God is the only one who can lift us out of our downward spiral of sin. When we continue to cling and hold on to our old rhythms and selfish ways, we are forfeiting God's grace to us. In other words, when we cling to our own way, we are depriving ourselves of God's love for us. Jonah feels such relief when he finally turns to God and begins to follow him that he ends his prayer by saying this: "But I, with shouts of grateful praise, will sacrifice to you. What I have vowed, I will make good. I will say, salvation comes from the Lord." Are you stuck in an unhealthy rhythm and spiraling out of control? Here is what I want you to know today. Jesus is the only one who can save you. You need to admit that you can't do it on your own and ask Him to rescue you. If you do that, He will do it. You can say this simple prayer right now with me. Lord Jesus, I give you my life. Lift me up and rescue me from the downward spiral of my own sin. I give you all of me so that you can live inside of and lead all of me. Amen. Now you might be asking, what now? What's next? What happens after God rescues us from the downward spiral? I'm so glad that you asked that. But you'll have to come back next week and find out. In the meantime, if you prayed that prayer with me today, I'm so glad you did. And we would like to hear about it and know so that we can continue to help you move forward in your relationship with Jesus. So if you would please just send us an email to prayers@thetablejoliet.org, and someone from our staff will connect with you. Thank you so much for joining us today for our second installment of Jumping Ship with Jonah. I can't wait to bring you more of Jonah's story next week. Hope you have a great week. Bye. Lord, bring someone across my path who needs you. Give me the eyes to see them, the ears to listen to them, the arms to embrace them, and the heart to love them well. Amen.
Thank you so much for tuning in today, and we thank you so much for continuing to support us. We hope you have a great week.